Well, I was not anticipating covering this story today, but it appears the San Francisco 49ers truly had interest in signing Tom Brady this season, and the source might actually surprise you. This came out from the ESPN article done by Nick Wagner on Brock Purdy and kind of the season he's had, and at one point leading the MVP conversation and just everything that he's done. Brock Purdy has had a phenomenal year, but we all know that it was in question at one point due to the UCL injury that he suffered in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles last season. Well, it was Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk who pointed this little nugget out. And if you know anything about Mike Florio, he's not the biggest 49er fan, but he is also someone who has been pounding the table that the 49ers were going to sign Tom Brady. Take a listen to Florio kind of set the stage, and then we're going to react and also share a direct quote from Brock Purdy about this entire situation. But first, take a listen to Florio kind of explain what's going on.
This is a special emergency edition of PFTPM. Not that it's a significant emergency. It's something that was already known as of 6 days ago. It's just nobody noticed it. This is an amazing development to me for a variety of reasons. And let's start with the news, as buried in a long article from Nick Wagner of ESPN.com regarding Brock Purdy. Down near the bottom is a story shared by Purdy that he was told by 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan in the offseason that if healthy, Purdy would be the starting quarterback unless the 49ers could lure Tom Brady to play for the team he grew up rooting for, the team he wanted to play for in 2020, but the 49ers said thank you and no to Tom Brady then, and might have had serious regrets about it because, and I think Shanahan has said this, they thought that he was just too old to be as effective as he had been. 3 years later, they wanted him to supplant the quarterback who had taken them to the NFC Championship game, had gotten injured early, and then ultimately the 49ers lost to the Eagles.
All right. So again, wasn't anticipating covering this today, and I didn't even catch this in the article from last week. So let's take a look at it. As we know, Brock Purdy, he's had a great season, and he's been and done phenomenal things this year, but there was a chance that wasn't going to happen. So take a look right here in this little snippet from the article from Nick Wagner. And it is, like I said, from PFT who pointed this out. But this is a quote from Brock Purdy on the situation with the quarterback this offseason. So the quote goes on to say, early in the offseason, Niners coach Kyle Shanahan sat down with Purdy and assured him that if he was healthy, he would be the starter unless Brady wanted to play one more season for his hometown Niners. That meant so much to me, Purdy said. I remember him saying, if we can get Tom Brady, we're going to try to get him. And I was like, yeah, he's the GOAT. I get it. But something deep down inside of me was sort of like, dude, I just showed you that I can play well in this system. And we were one game away from the Super Bowl. More than anything, I was like, okay, now let's go. Well, there are multiple things to take away from this quote from Brock Purdy. This is from Brock. This isn't from an unnamed source, an unnamed executive. This is from the man himself, Brock Purdy, letting the world know that Kyle Shanahan was about to bring in Tom Brady. And let's take a step back really quickly, because obviously we know what kind of season Brock has put together. He was third in All-Pro voting. Some would say he should have been above Dak Prescott, and I would have to agree with that. And he is a Pro Bowl starter, and he had a phenomenal year, MVP frontrunner at one point, and it really was a great season by Brock Purdy. But there was a chance that that may have never happened, because if the 49ers went out and signed Tom Brady, obviously Brock wouldn't have played. So, but kind of looking at this from a broader perspective, I don't fault Kyle necessarily for testing these waters, because I think if you're looking at this from his perspective of pushing this team forward as best he could, you have Brock Purdy coming off a severe injury to his throwing elbow. There's no guaranteed that Brock was going to be the same quarterback, let alone be better. And then he turned out to be. So the idea of Tom Brady coming in for one season with obviously a Super Bowl window available, and then Brock sitting behind Tom Brady, getting to learn from the GOAT, I could understand that thought process. However, we know how the cookie crumbled, and Tom retires, and then the 49ers bring in Sam Darnold. I think another element of this is just it's apparently clear that the 49ers were not moving forward with Trey Lance, and I think that decision was made early in the offseason. We heard rumblings of potential trade talks at the NFL Combine, and obviously he was ultimately traded before the season started. So I think it's crystal the 49ers were out on Trey Lance early on in the offseason, and even kind of playing with the idea of Brock not being the starter next year. So we even heard from Mark Schlereth as well on his podcast come out and say that Sam Darnold had an opportunity to beat out Brock Purdy, but he would have to do it in the preseason. And we know that didn't come to fruition. And so Brock Purdy remains and becomes the starter, and the rest is history. We're now in the NFC Championship game against the Lions. But it's just crazy, man. I think there's multiple ways to kind of process this from multiple perspectives. If we look at this from Brock's perspective, and as you can see, I think he was kind of like, oh, like I showed you what I can do, and I showed you what I can build on, and you're still going to go with another guy? Okay. I think, and again, Brock is a true competitor, and that's something that can light a fire inside of him. And I think it did. So he definitely took that in stride. And I think that's probably why he worked so tirelessly on his rehab and bounced back in training camp, and really pushed himself to be ready at the start of the season. And but I like how he kind of interpreted that. Like clearly when he says, okay, now let's go, he's saying, okay, like I see how it is. I got to keep getting better. I got to keep improving, and I got to keep proving to you, Kyle, that I'm your guy. So I think he's handled it as well as he could, and he's clearly gotten better for it. But again, so much goes into the thought of, well, what if Tom Brady was here this season? Like, it's just a crazy thought process to have. Now, obviously, this is coming out before the NFC Championship game. And this is a week where we're already hearing from a ton of people kind of raining down on Brock Purdy for that performance against the Packers and all these different types of things. And it's a wild scenario with how everything ultimately played out. But, Brock withstood the storm. And again, it almost makes me even appreciate Brock that much more, right? We know Brock has been overlooked and doubted, and that's part of who he is. And, Kyle kind of flirting and letting him know, like, hey, we're going to go with Tom if we can get him. He clearly, took that a certain way, which he should. He's a competitor. Any competitor should kind of take it that way. So just crazy. Didn't have this on my bingo card for the NFC Championship week, but here we are. What do you guys think about this whole story of the 49ers potentially going and getting Tom Brady and all these different types of things? Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.